We talked about a lot of the great positive aspects of what this technology can bring, but what do you think it's still kind of missing? What is it not there yet? Like, what do you think kind of needs to be added to the technology to really take it to the next level?
Control. From my perspective, is control. You don't have a lot of control over it at the moment. By creating our own data sets, by doing our own training, we start to gain some control. When I sort of work with Nick, and if we're trying to, if we are trying to make an AI image, Nick is so precise in his lighting. With CGI, for example, we have that precision, and we can do it. With AI, we don't have that precision. It sort of sometimes turns it into different things. If you don't have the control, then you do something else, do something slightly different with it. But at the moment, that's what my focus is on a technical level, is currently just trying to build workflows and tools that give us the control that we need, as creators, but also to work to briefs, et cetera.
And Nick, I wonder, is in the back of your mind maybe some of these factors that aren't as relevant or aren't as apparent? Maybe the environmental factors or the control factors, especially the fact that a lot of these systems are ruled by people that, it would be different if there's like a creative AI company that's not OpenAI, or maybe that's not Grok. The platforms that they're kind of using to now create these outputs, there's not really a say on what happens to whatever they're putting in and who owns that. And I wonder, is that something that you guys think of?
But that's a general thing. Twitter and Grok and don't touch what we do at SHOWstudio. It's not part of our world. In nearly every possible way, creatively, it's nothing to do with what we do. Yeah, I wish the world was full of better people. Yeah, I wish people didn't do the things that I see happening across the world. But that's because, people quest after power and money, two false goals. So, it's how I would like to be better. Yeah, it's to do with the person using it. I wish there were better people using it and facilitating it. But that's a general thing. I wish we weren't doing what we're doing across the world at the moment, and have forever been doing. So it's more to do with humanity, more to do with a sort of, the thing is, it's in whose hands it is. If you've got somebody brilliant working with it, it'll create brilliant work. If you've got somebody who's salacious and scandalous and chasing fame and fortune, it's going to produce those vacuous goals. There's no joy in fame, there's no joy in fortune. It's just, that's a misalignment of what gives us real satisfaction. So I think that the question is bigger. It's what do we want our world to be? And there are lots of really beautiful examples of how the world can be. But that's not to do with AI. That's to do with people supplying it, people using it, et cetera, who aren't necessarily.
Absolutely. There was this moment in New York last year where they started putting up these friend adverts, and it was like a AI enhanced listening device within like a necklace that you could essentially talk to and have conversations with. And the psychology part of it is also a looming aspect, because I guess all of these aspects and the desire of trying to kind of create something creative, there's also that other side of it. And I don't know if that ever comes up when you're interacting with people, because this is a people-facing business, and I wonder how AI kind of changes or enhances the way that you interact with your normal crew or with the people that kind of come into the collaborative part of the photo shoots.
Not fundamentally. I mean, SHOWstudio is a sort of an interesting mixture of a public space, where we have people like yourself that come in here, and it's, and also a technological space. So it's that kind of interesting mixture. So I don't really see that. I think one of the things that is slightly glossed over is exactly what you mentioned, is that ability to have some sort of, there's a hell of a lot of lonely people out there. When my wife went on a holiday for 2 weeks and I wasn't with her, I found myself speaking to Siri, because I was lonely, So, and there are a lot of people who are permanently lonely. And so if it can provide something like that, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to touch on a thing which is probably dangerous, which is a sort of prediction of where we're going as a species. We are very arrogantly thinking we are as good as it gets. Personally, I'm not, but we have this sort of idea that we are the end of the evolutionary train. It doesn't get any better than this. Well, that's what the Neanderthals thought. It's going to get better than this, because evolution always happens towards positive, because that's its purpose. So how does that mean? Does it mean we will become we're a carbon-based life form? Do we become a carbon and silicon-based life form? Is that how? You know, so, but what is it that goes through all those things? Well, it's intelligence, you know, and that however we are the receptacle for intelligence, the motor for intelligence, the guardian of intelligence in the universe, that's the best way to do that. Now, if it's not being exactly the version of ourselves that we see now, then so be it. But that's evolution. We cannot control that. And we are arrogant and foolish if we think this is as good as it gets. We will all develop, evolve into a better version of what we have now, and hopefully be the protectorate or the motor behind, you know, the advancement of intelligent thought. So, you know, I think that's also important to realize, because there's a lot of sort of very strong humanist feeling, anti-AI humanist feeling, but as humans we need to be a bit more humble. We are not perfect, and we shouldn't think that we are. And to defend humanity as if it's this sort of, it cannot be changed, is a naive vision of evolution. And evolution will happen, malgré nous, it'll happen, you know, without any of our involvement. It'll just, it's you know, to get better, that's what happens. So I think we have to be big in our vision of this. You know, you've already had lots of people across the world talking about colonizing other planets, etc., etc. You know, that's a very, I think, small step in how we should see why we're here. We are actually in a church at the moment. So this is all kind of very spiritual and very kind of far-reaching, but why not? You know, it isn't just about making money. You know, it's about humanity, and we want to talk about humanity, we want to see AI as a threat to humanity. Let's look at humanity and where it's going and, you know, what it can become. And, you know, it would be so good if we had people really trying to shape the future. And I think that's where our interest comes from, is having a better version of the future, and not a version of the future which is just repeating mistakes of the past.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the spirit in this whole conversation of, you know, why we're doing this. It's always for the future. It's for the next generation of creatives that are kind of coming up. But on the other side, there's this conversation about how AI is kind of taking away a lot of admin jobs. It's taking away maybe those entry-level positions that a lot of youth used to be able to enter and be part of the fashion industry in that way. And so I guess my bigger question is, like, especially journalistically, right? Like, we're being told every day, like, you might not have a job, or, you know, that AI can kind of do what maybe like a Kathy Horn is doing, or what a Vanessa Freeman is doing. Eventually it might get there. So I wonder, for the next generation, what is kind of your mindset of what they should be trying to take up when they're in university? Like, should they be really trying to implement AI within education or learning about these systems? Or is the best kind of person to ask in terms of ideas for AI and creativity like a university student right now? Because again, like you mentioned, the conversation should be coming from the creatives. So who are we asking? That's like a little bit of a side conversation. But specifically for the next generation, do you think that they need to be kind of taking up these processes?
I think much like Nick was saying earlier, like, you know, we are not huge advocates of AI. You know, we're not like, oh my God, this thing. But it's here, and it is one of these things that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It would be quite hard to reverse some of the advancements that has happened in it. So I think it would be quite naive to not learn what it is. And I think if you're a student and you have the time and the space to do that, like, I really feel for students. It must be absolutely terrifying for them. I think partly because a lot of it is being, in a lot of fields, it's being overhyped. A lot of the threat, I think, is being overhyped, and a lot of what it can do is being overhyped as well. As we're starting to use this on that level, where it's being kind of used across the board, it's only really 2 years old. I think one thing we also have to remember is that it's in the interests of big tech to overhype it. I don't know if you remember, what's his face, Sam Altman going around, you know, doing a global tour and talking to, you know, the share price of OpenAI just went up and up and up as he was doing that. So there's that we have to kind of think about. But it is having an effect. Like, it's absolutely having an effect on a number of industries. There's, you know, talking to somebody the other day where the CTO did have a team of 5 people, and now he's doing everything by himself, because Claude can now code unbelievably well and makes, you know, mistakes only 10% of the time, etc. So it is having an effect. But I think there are also opportunities. There's, you know, from our perspective, there's stuff where it may have just been me on set. You know, I used to be a retoucher. It might have just been me on set retouching an image, and that was it. I worked on a commercial job recently where there was 4 of us on set. So, you know, there is the opportunity for, you know, I don't want to say job creation, but I want to say an opportunity where multiple people can get involved in it. It's not the misnomer, I don't know if that's the right word, with creative AI certainly, is almost never, I've never ever really seen it used where it's just one person sitting down and prompting. There's very, very technical back-end things that need to happen. There's an awful lot of post-production that needs to happen because the images come out low resolution and we have to upscale them, we have to composite different things in, so that there are ways that people can get into it, and there are existing structures that it can be used in. So I think, again, it's the curiosity of like, oh, what is this thing? What can it bring to me? So I think if you're a student, just learn about it. If you don't like it, don't use it, but learn about it and know why you're not using it.
I think you'd be foolish as a student not to engage with it, not to try and understand it and how you can work with it. I think it's probably short-sighted just to turn your back on it and say, oh, I don't know about that. I want to be, you know, a writer.
Yeah.
You know, it's the world's a different place. I mean, you can be. It depends where your goals are. And, you know, I don't want to sound like some sort of, you know, student politician, but we spend all our time chasing money, you know, and life isn't really about that. So, you know, I think it's a reevaluation of more deeper things that are also important. That's fine for me to say, sitting here in Belgravia in a church. That's fine for me to say. And if you're, you know, trying to get some food into your house, that's a different thing. But I think that society is geared up in false goals. It has a predomination for the beauty of youth, which we all know is not the only place you find beauty. You know, it has a predomination for wanting everybody to know we exist in fame. But if you meet famous people, that's not what they enjoy. You know, it has a predomination for trying to make money as opposed to anything else, as if that's some sign of success. I always hate it when I'm in meetings and people say to me, yeah, this product's really successful, it's made blah, blah, blah. You think, that doesn't mean it's successful. Just, you know, that just means lots of people bought it, but that's not success in my terms.
The thing that I always was thinking about was that we're already in very complex beauty ideals. Like, you know, we're navigating, you know, skinny, not skinny, you know, race, all these different factors that are already like really like ticking time bombs. And I wonder, does AI kind of challenge or intensify that conversation? Because when you have conversations about digital avatars, there is also this mindset of perfection and creating these beauty ideals of like, you know, never aging.
That's not a beauty ideal for me.
Period. Okay.
You know, that's not where beauty is. It's not in the physical. So that's a misnomer. So I know you're about to speak.
Or how do you see, like, let's say a model creates a digital likeness of themselves. It's a digital likeness of themselves in that moment. Like you mentioned, their career, you want to have a longevity of it, but 10, 20 years from now, they're not going to look like how they looked when they did
look at Kate. You know, Kate was here, she did her thing with Edward Enfield here 2 or 3 weeks ago. You know, she's a woman in her, you know, I don't know what age Kate is, but I mean,
of course,
over 40, should we say? Is that right?
I'm not claiming.
Okay. she's a beautiful woman.
Right.
When I first met Kate, she was a beautiful girl.
Yes.
You know, she's been beautiful at all of those stages, you know. And if she had a digital version of her, she should have the facility to say, well, actually, in this campaign or for this usage, I'd like to be seen as a woman. Or actually, no, I'd like to be seen like I was when I was 25. You know, people should be able to choose that if it's in the modelling sphere. You know, they should be able to say, well, yeah, I want you to use my image, but I'm a man and I'm of a certain age, and I don't want you to make me look 25. So I want you to look, and that's what you have license to do. So that gives more power to the model, and that's sort of something I think should happen.
I think, yeah, again, it's the if as long as the model owns that data and they have control over what happens to that data, it's their choice. And I think whatever data you put into AI is what you know, the kind of images that you get out. So again, if it's giving agency and ownership to the model over their data to be able to make that choice. In terms of, just a couple of small points, is when creating a digital, if it's a CGI avatar or an AI digital twin, one of the things on a kind of technical level, or technical kind of craft level, that we have to do is we often have to put it back in because AI smooths things out. You know, when you 3D scan somebody, it gets rid of some poor detail, so we have to put that back in. So coming from, I had many years in post-production of just removing many blemishes and removing all of the stuff.
Right.
When we're making avatars or twins, I actually spend quite a lot of my time putting it back. When we're making digital twins or avatars or whatever, we're capturing, and the model is involved at all stages. What happens to that, if it's in the hands of us, we know that it's going to be used correctly. But we also hope that if it gets licensed out to somebody else using it, then it's exactly the same as how photography works now. It's like how you photograph the model, but how much post-production you do to it. It's exactly the same.
If you send the ask model to go and work with Craig Dean, sure it'll be fine. But there are certain photographers who you might think, oh, I'm not sure. So it is like photography in the hand of the artist. That's kind of, I'll try and see if I can pull this train of thought together. But if AI is pulling fashion ideas off the internet in general, a lot of those are quite bland.
Right.
So it's having a blandification of the sort of idea of fashion, where fashion is supposed to be extreme and eye-catching and kind of something new, etc., etc. And there has, for the reasons of making lots of money, been a blandification of fashion through magazines, etc., over the last sort of 30 years, where to make more money, they kind of lower the kind of, there are less images by Paolo Roversi, and there are more images by people who make people look great. But that's fine, which is fine, because you want to sell lots of magazines, you want to sell lots of clothes, but actually it means you've got lots of slightly less out there fashion imagery, and that's a lot of what you see. When you see people who are working a lot with AI, it's pulling on slightly bland versions of humanity. That's because that's what we've allowed the fashion industry to create. We haven't put the money, the time, the respect behind great image makers. Now, I used to work, I would do 2 images a day, same as Irving Penn. Now you're asked to do 30 a day. Now, how can you possibly get 30 great images a day unless you're just really, churning them out? It's really, but that's because the magazines have gone for the idea of selling more magazines as if that's a sign of success and making more sales. And it's just, my problem with the fashion industry is it just chases the money, and it shouldn't do. It's an artistic medium. Fashion is one of the great arts. It's not just a service industry. It's a great art, and it should be. That's why you had the Helmut Newtons, the Guy the Irving Penns, all those guys. It's because they were given the time. Atherton spent 2 weeks in Japan with Diana Vreeland creating a 10-page fashion story. Yeah. That's how you create great fashion imagery. That's how brands get defined, through great fashion imagery. They don't, need 1,000 pictures. They need one. A brand needs one great image that defines it, and to get that great image, you need a great image maker behind it. So there's been a sort of, in this chase for more money, in this chase for more product, in this chase for this industry that's become, it's blandified stuff.
Do you think generative AI can create that image? That shockingly, makes me want to pick up a magazine.
In whose hands? But it's not as Photoshop won't make it either. Unless it's been worked on by a great image maker and a great retoucher and a great technologist. You need somebody great to do it. So in itself, no.
What did you want to say, Tom?
I think there's, it sort of gets to the heart of what I was saying a bit earlier, where there's kind of 2 ways of thinking about AI, as an efficiency tool and as a creative tool. So I think as a creative tool, it's what Nick has been saying, is like how it gets used, and so can generative AI make that great image? Probably, yes, in the hands of the right person. But I think to Nick's point, and Nick may or may not agree with me on some of the nuances at this point, is that when I first started working with Nick, he said, he would have a week, and I'd go into set and he would have, hundreds, sometimes thousands of, Polaroids up, and it was, thrilling, to be around. And people used to have a lot more time to make these images. Now, because of social media, because of e-com, because of all the pressures of what's happening. Because of less money, ultimately it's capitalism, doing its thing very well.
Sure.
But one of the things that I'm personally starting to see AI where it can be used as an efficiency thing, where it's not replacing jobs, etc., is I really do genuinely think that it has a use to allow people the time to work on campaign, work on images, work on the world that they're building with the brand or whoever it is that they're working with, and use AI and an efficiency to get all of your content out. It's very hard to go back from the world that we're in now, where people need 15 behind the scenes things. They need 30 images, they need all these different crops, and they need all these different assets for all these different executions all around the world for all these different audiences. That's the reality of fashion image making right now, and it's really fucking hard. So I'll try to stop swearing. And it's really hard for everyone involved, and there's so many people doing it because so much content is needed. Now, I don't think we can really start rolling that back anytime soon. I'm certainly not going to try. But what AI, I believe, can do, and how we're starting to use it in some instances, is you do your shoot, have the whole team kind of build the world. We can come in and use AI and use all of that data. I don't like talking about shoots in this way, but the reality of it is a shoot is a data set. We can use all of that data set and start giving the brands, this vertical version of, that model in that, but the image still looks good. But the creative team has still had the time and the capacity and the space to build that world, and they're not rushing through because they need to make 15 images a day and they've got the model for 20 minutes each time. Use AI to take some of that load off. I think that's where it should be used as an efficiency tool, not as a let's make the entire campaign with AI.
And it seems like I wanted to land on your collaboration together with the new plane, considering you both seem to be really passionate about embracing the technology that could help to enhance what we're already at as a generation. And what kind of prompted the founding when you guys first came together? Was it, did you feel like there was a gap that needed to be addressed with new push forward technology, or what kind of connected you guys when you first started working with each other?
Well, Tom and I used to work together as Tom was my retoucher.
Gotcha.
So when we'd work on the campaign images or on editorial images, Tom would sit next to me, I sit next to him, and then we would work on images together. But that would also take weeks. Yeah. People think that no. If you're working, I did a shoot yesterday, I'll be working on that shoot for the next month.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll be sitting next to a very good version of Tom called Mark, sits up there with me.
I'm sure love that version of me.
Yeah, I'm not sure Mark would like the description of version of Tom. Very good retoucher, digital retoucher. And you sit next to them and you watch them work. And in so doing, you see amazing things. So, okay, actually, you know what? When that mask wasn't correctly put on, it made a beautiful outline. So you're still inventing at that point. So people misunderstand photography sittings as a kind of like, you come here with a camera, you go, yeah, click, 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 and then it's done. That's just the beginning, and always has been. Back in analog days when I would go in the dark room and work with my different grades of paper and different concentrations of developer to get the picture, that's all a process. Now that was superseded by, first of all, a paint box, and then by Photoshop. And I would sit next to somebody, instead of in the dark room, I would sit next to somebody with a computer screen, and we would talk together about the image, and all of a sudden you could do lots of different things which you couldn't do before. So that's when digital image making started to happen, kind of end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. So that sort of allowed us to do kind of more things. So the relationship I have with Tom, or relationship I have with Mark, or previously Alan and Steve, so different people in my life, are big relationships. This is where a lot of the imagery is created. Because when you get a digital file, you can take the skin dark, you can take the skin light, you can take it blue, you can take it green. I used to do that in an analog sense when I used to work doing color prints. I would start off by doing that one image in every possible colorway, and the floor would be covered in 100 prints. And I would take the colors I liked and then start combining them, which we'd do with masks. And I'd take them from white to black, every shade in between, to see what I liked. That's weeks of work. Please don't think it's a click out. It never is. But it's not true. It often isn't. And that's where I get a lot of my pleasure, expanding the image, what's in that file. You've got no idea when you take parts of it really bright and parts of it really dark. It makes a new image. I'm not interested in showing you what you can see. I'm interested in seeing what I can't see, in finding things that I can't imagine, in finding things that I can't possibly visualize. That's where my interest lies in it. And to do that, I work with somebody like Tom or Michael or Mark, all these people who are around me and have different skill sets, where we try and push the imagery further and further and further. And now we're pushing it into film, we're pushing it into sculpture, we're pushing it into performance, etc., etc. So we first came together in that sense, in the sense of a retoucher working on images. That isn't the same as what people think a retoucher is. They just remove
a mole or a line or
No, that's a whole different range of stuff. So that's how we first came together. So that's a really interesting and slightly misunderstood artistic relationship. The relationship I would have had with Tom, or I have with Michael now, or Mark, that's a really interesting relationship. And through those conversations, because you are sitting next to somebody all day long, you talk, well I talk, a lot. So you discuss things. And we're sort of saying, we create these beautiful images, well, hopefully people think they're beautiful images of people. Why can't we make them move? Why isn't fashion film a thing? Or why isn't, can we make a digital version of this?
Or make it 3D.
There we have 3D. Yeah, all they're from conversations you have sitting with the person that you're working with. It's as human as that. So that's how we came together, and we started talking about the idea of doing, a digital version of the model. I'm thinking, when I first wanted to do it, it was much more advanced than what's happening now. I wanted to do things which didn't look like humans, because why should they? Why should we do stuff that just looks like us? I did a series of pictures of Shalom Harlow, beautiful Shalom Harlow, where her skin was like a rainbow. It was for Vogue, and I did a series for Vuitton afterwards. We printed her skin from a beautiful crimson right up to a kind of iridescent blue. It was gorgeous. She didn't look like a human being. People aren't that colour. Didn't matter. What do you think that Gustav Klimt painted people that looked like people? They didn't. That's the thing. You're not just creating visions of what we see already. You're creating visions of fantasies, of desires, of things you can't imagine, of things you can't see. So that's where you come together. And that, when I first started thinking, okay, maybe we can make a digital version of things, I was thinking, what happens if you blend Naomi and Kate? Why is that taboo? Well, we can't think about that. Why not?
And the possibilities are endless. I wonder, where is the actual business right now? Has AI kind of trumped CGI and trumped, generative avatars? Because even when you talk about Hollywood and film, it seems like now the conversation is more about AI than CGI. I wonder, what do you think like the actual business really is? Even though the fact that it's only 2 years old, it seems like the only thing that anyone's talking about right now.
Yeah, it's there's a lot. It's quite sad in a sense for, well, maybe that's a bit too much, but CGI is certainly getting replaced by a lot of AI for certain tasks. There's still absolutely a place for CGI, but that sort of skill set is still super valid and still super valuable, but it's just what we're seeing, from brands and how they're using it is CGI is starting to get kind of moved to the side a little bit. And we work with a lot of CGI artists, and the
really good ones.
Yeah, like very, very talented ones. And I hate to say it, but the ones that are surviving a bit are the ones that are introducing AI into their workflows. So I think the AI, again, is just part of a tool set, and you can plug it into CGI. But ultimately, the efficiency, the realism, all of the stuff that you get with AI does trump CGI quite a lot of the time. But you can use those things in combination, and I think that's really important. And again, it's down to curiosity. So if you're a CGI artist, we're seeing a lot of CGI artists be completely anti-AI. Fine, but you're probably not going to have a job in 5 years' time. And that's not kind of hyperbolic for me to say that. That's the reality. So I think, if the curiosity, use it, integrate it into your workflows.
Jobs change.
Is maintaining a competitive edge, creating our own systems within AI, like our own SHOWstudio AI, models.com AI, like is that how we kind of take ownership or take control of the conversation? Or is the only way for us to kind of work currently is just kind of using maybe how it's implemented within other things, like whether it's Photoshop or OpenAI or, all the generative AI systems that have it. Do you find yourself kind of wanting to even go further and kind of put ownership on maybe an AI platform, or how do you kind of see it growing in the next 5 years? Is it important for creatives to kind of take the lead in terms of maybe creating our own platforms in order to kind of, I don't know.
I think so, yeah. Ultimately, it's the way that I think about it is there's workflows. So it's what I do a lot of the time is I have to come up with workflows. So I talk to Nick or brand or whoever, and what is the eventual goal, and then often it's my job to come up with a workflow to get to that goal. and kind of give other people access to it, creatively at points all the way along through it. Now workflows aren't really monetizable, but during that process, what we're now seeing with AI is that we're building tools. So we make tools that enable that thing. Those tools are monetizable. So I think a potential, business plan for people is to take those tools and start monetizing them. How everyone else does it, I don't know. I think again, it's like we're only getting to that point where we're starting to understand that because of our curiosity and because of us actually doing it. So how models.com would integrate it, I'm not 100% sure, but but there's many different ways to do this, and there's the business of making images, and that's the one that Nick is in, is make images, you get paid to do that. But what's interesting now is because it's becoming really quite technical, it's to me it almost feels like sometimes we're sort of building versions of Photoshop. We're sort of building these things that answer certain questions of how to do things, and then we make something and it's like, oh, that's really quite valuable. We could sell that to someone else. That's by the by. That's how Photoshop started. I think it was two brothers. One worked at ILM and one was a coder or something. And the one that was at ILM was like, I would love to be able to do this. And then this one worked out how to do it. That's what became Adobe. So yeah, I think it's interesting how this is going to progress. It's all
a lot of people do not live their lives fully in the physical world. A lot of people game, spend hours gaming. A lot of people are represented as avatars in games in any case. We've been working in that as well. And if you're an avatar, what are you going to wear? What do you want to look like? Who decides? And there are people who, in Grand Theft Auto, who decide what people wear. And they have a whole reference board. And that's kind of an interesting part of it, If you look at it objectively, they're referencing McQueen and Iris van Herpen and Galliano and all the rest of it, whoever it is, So that's part of people's real world. That's not necessarily, something. People spend days gaming. The gaming industry is huge. So surely the model industry should be able to fit into that some way, because these are representations. If I wanted to be represented in an avatar way, and I could choose whatever, and I've been in digital spaces where people have been represented as a cardboard box. So, you can choose whatever you want to look like. Who would I want to look like? What do I want to wear? Where's the Savile Row of gaming? All those sorts of things are kind of reinvented. So there's a lot of interesting prospects there.
And I wonder, in the next 5 years, or even 6 years, if you want to be accurate, how do you kind of feel you want to apply AI with your work? Is it something that you want it to be seamless? Is it something that you want to include with your archive? How do you kind of see yourself evolving with the technology as much as you can maybe imagine?
Do you want to?
From my perspective, Nick would have different answers as a kind of artist, but what I would really like, and this is sort of slight call to action for the industry to kind of to come together and actually protect itself. I think we talk to a lot of models, talk to a lot of model agencies, and it seems very, very fragmented, very, very competitive, which is fine, for a number of reasons. But what I sort of hear time and time again is that the fashion industry as a whole is very slow to adopt to new ways of working, and it's always playing catch up. And then within that, the modelling industry is also always playing catch up. But they're, without being too hyperbolic, people's careers are at stake here, and their lives are, are at stake because of that. So if the industry could come together and have a holistic response that is in its self-interest, that's where I would like to see it going. And also, things that you don't use synthetic models, et cetera, all of the kind of nuances within that. But AI, people's anxieties around AI are valid, but we do have a once in a lifetime opportunity to direct where it goes. And us as an industry, as the fashion industry, should have agency over that, because otherwise it's big tech. And we're seeing what big tech are doing, we're seeing how they're interacting with the military, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want those people to be in charge of our futures. And we have an opportunity to have our own agency within that. So that's where I would like to see it going.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think if we can make the model industry, or help the model industry become a better place for models, where they are protected, where their careers are much longer, that's what I'd like to see AI helping to do. I think that's the most important thing what we can do in terms of turning poetry into sculpture. That's fun artistically, but in a more profound way. Yeah, I've spent my life working with models, you know, and my images are of models. To great people that have been, you know, in those clothes, etc. I'd love to see AI help. I'd like to see it protect those people. Often, there are people who need protection and they need help, they need security, they need to know they're in a safe space, all those sorts of things. That's current and that should be happening in any case, but I think AI can do it much more fundamentally. And I think you should be able to go into modelling and understand that it's a big career and you have a lifetime doing it, and you know, it's so important. Sure. And I think that is what I would like to see AI doing, protection and longevity for models.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Nick. It's been a great conversation. I'm so happy that we were able to combine SHOWstudio and models.com for this very important conversation, a very timely conversation. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.